Millionaire hires a poor woman to pose as his fiancée at a family gathering, but the truth she reveals. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's go back to the main character. He stands just inside a quiet coffee shop on the edge of downtown, suit immaculate, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the rain sliding down the window like time he can't afford to lose. Because in exactly 72 hours his entire family will be seated in one room, waiting to judge the woman he claims to love, and right now that woman does not exist. His name is Daniel Wright, a self-made millionaire who built his company from a one-bedroom apartment and 14-hour days. A man who can negotiate 8-figure deals without blinking, yet feels his pulse spike at the thought of his mother's questions and his relatives' smiles that never quite reach their eyes. The gathering isn't a celebration, it's a test, and Daniel knows the rules without anyone saying them out loud. Bring a fiancé who fits, who looks right, who speaks right, who proves that his success didn't drift too far from the family's expectations. He exhales, checks his watch, and that's when he notices her across the room, sitting alone with a chipped mug, coat folded neatly on her lap, counting change on the table before tucking it back into her wallet as if embarrassed by the sound. Her name is Claire Miller, and nothing about her belongs in Daniel's world. She works 2 jobs, one at a grocery store and another cleaning offices at night, measuring her weeks by rent deadlines and gas prices, not stock charts. When Daniel approaches, she looks up with guarded eyes, the kind that learned early not to trust sudden attention. He doesn't waste time on charm. He offers clarity. He says he needs a favor, a role, a weekend. He says he will pay. Claire almost laughs, not because it's funny, but because it sounds like the kind of mistake people make when they think money can smooth over anything. She starts to say no. Then he explains the terms, calm and precise, like a contract spoken aloud. 3 days, a family gathering at a lakeside estate 200 miles away. Introductions, dinners, photos, nothing physical, nothing beyond acting, and compensation that would cover 3 months of her rent plus the overdue utility bill she hasn't mentioned to anyone. Claire's fingers tighten around her mug. She hears the hum of the espresso machine, the scrape of a chair, the ordinary world continuing as if this moment isn't about to split her life into before and after. She asks why her. Daniel tells the truth he's willing to admit. Because she looks honest, because she didn't interrupt, because she didn't smile when he mentioned money. Silence stretches. Rain taps the glass. Finally, she asks one question that lands harder than any negotiation tactic. What happens when your family finds out I don't belong? Daniel answers without flinching. He says they won't. And if they do, the weekend will already be over. Claire studies him. This man who has everything except the one thing he's trying to buy. And she realizes he isn't offering escape. He's offering a performance with rules, and rules feel safer than hope. She nods once, slow and deliberate. 3 days, she says. Daniel slides a simple envelope across the table, untouched by logos or flash. And for a brief second their hands hover over the same space. 2 lives about to intersect on borrowed terms. Neither of them knowing that this arrangement, designed to keep feelings out, is about to expose a truth neither can afford to hide. The agreement becomes real the moment Claire steps into Daniel's car the next morning, the leather seats still holding the faint scent of cologne and quiet money. And as the city fades behind them, she realizes this is no longer a conversation in a coffee shop, but a commitment with mileage and consequences. Daniel drives with practiced calm, explaining the schedule in a steady voice. Breakfast with his mother, dinner with extended family, a charity brunch on Sunday, all of it measured and precise like a boardroom agenda. Yet Claire notices the way his knuckles tighten on the steering wheel whenever he mentions his family, as if numbers and markets have always been easier than blood ties. They stop first, at a modest clothing store, not a luxury boutique, and Daniel insists it is practical, neutral, nothing flashy, because he does not want her to feel like a prop. He wants her to look believable, and Claire appreciates that more than she expects. She tries on a simple navy dress that fits without shouting, shoes that do not pinch, And when she steps out of the fitting room, Daniel nods once, approving but restrained, as if learning to keep admiration behind a wall. He hands her a small card with his assistant's number, explains that questions go there, boundaries matter, and Claire agrees, reminding him again that this is acting, not reinvention, that she will not pretend to be someone else, only the version of herself that can stand in his world for 3 days. The drive continues north, miles ticking by, fields opening into rolling hills, and Daniel outlines the rules again. No surprises, no personal stories unless asked. Let him lead conversations, and Claire listens, filing each instruction away, because she knows what it is like to follow rules that keep a roof over your head. As evening approaches, they reach the lake house, wide and quiet, set back from the road, lights glowing like a promise that demands a performance. And Claire feels the familiar tightening in her chest that comes before a night shift or a landlord's call, the sense that she must be flawless because mistakes are expensive. Inside, Daniel shows her the guest room. Comfortable but impersonal, explains where he will sleep, separate rooms, separate lives, and for a moment the formality feels heavier than intimacy would have. Dinner that night is just the two of them, practice without witnesses, and Daniel asks her simple questions: where she grew up, what she likes to read, what makes her uncomfortable, and Claire answers honestly, choosing truth that can pass for simplicity rather than lies that would trap her later. She tells him she grew up learning to read people quickly, to notice when a room turns cold, to speak only when words matter, and Daniel listens, realizing that her education has been different but no less rigorous than his own. They rehearse introductions, smiling without touching, sharing glances that suggest familiarity without claiming it, and Claire surprises him by catching small inconsistencies in his story, correcting him gently, reminding him that families notice details long before they notice wealth. Later, alone in her room, Claire lays the envelope on the bed and counts the money again, not because she doubts it is there, but because touching it reminds her why she said yes, because it represents time bought, bills paused, pressure eased. Yet she also feels something else settling in, the weight of being seen and measured in a world that rarely notices people like her unless they are in the way. Meanwhile, Daniel stands on the deck looking out at the dark water, thinking about how easily she adapted, how quickly she understood the unspoken rules of rooms he has navigated his whole life. And he wonders, not for the first time, whether success has taught him confidence or simply taught him how to hide uncertainty behind preparation. By the time the house goes quiet, both of them understand that the weekend ahead will not be about pretending to be in love. It will be about surviving scrutiny, about holding ground without revealing too much, and about discovering that the most difficult roles are not the ones we choose to play, but the ones others expect us to fit. Morning arrives quietly at the lake house, the kind of calm that feels intentional, curated, and by the time Claire steps into the kitchen, Daniel's mother is already there, perfectly composed, hands wrapped around a porcelain cup, as if she has been awake for hours waiting to assess the woman her son has chosen to bring into their world. Daniel introduces Claire with a practiced ease, his hand hovering briefly at the small of her back before dropping away. And Claire feels the first real test begin not with words, but with silence, with the pause that stretches just long enough to weigh her posture, her clothes, her voice before she speaks. His mother smiles politely and asks where Claire is from, how they met, questions that sound casual but land with the precision of a checklist, and Claire answers without rushing, grounding herself in honesty that fits within the boundaries they agreed on, explaining that they met through work connections, that timing brought them together, that sometimes life surprises you when you stop planning every step. Daniel watches closely, realizing that she is not reciting a script, but choosing each sentence with care, leaving no loose threads to pull. Breakfast continues with polite conversation. Yet Claire senses the subtle shifts, the way Daniel's mother steers topics toward education, travel, long-term goals, markers of worth disguised as curiosity, and Claire responds with calm humility, speaking about responsibility, about learning quickly because failure was never affordable, about valuing consistency over prestige. There is no apology in her tone, no attempt to impress, and Daniel notices something change in the room, not approval yet, but attention, the kind that means she is being taken seriously. After breakfast, Daniel pulls Claire aside, quietly reminding her of the schedule, the importance of staying close during introductions later that afternoon, and Claire nods, reminding him just as quietly that respect is not something she can fake, only uphold. They review their boundaries again, reaffirming that this is temporary, that neither of them owes the other more than what was agreed upon. Yet the repetition carries a new weight now that his family's eyes are on them. The afternoon brings extended relatives, uncles with firm handshakes, a cousin who laughs too loudly, an aunt who looks Claire up and down before asking what she does for a living. And Claire answers plainly, saying she works hard and pays her bills. Nothing more, nothing less. And the response unsettles some of them more than an impressive title would have. Daniel finds himself stepping in once or twice, redirecting conversations, subtly signaling that Claire is with him, that she deserves space, and he is surprised by how natural that feels, how protective he becomes without planning to. As the hours pass, Claire grows more aware of the unspoken hierarchy, the invisible lines that determine who speaks freely and who listens, and she navigates them with quiet intelligence, choosing moments to engage and moments to remain still, understanding that restraint can be a form of strength. Later, as the sun lowers over the lake and the family disperses to prepare for dinner, Daniel and Claire stand together on the back porch, the water reflecting the sky in muted colors, and for the first time since the agreement began, neither of them speaks. The silence is different now, heavier, shared, and Claire breaks it by saying she knows what his family is doing, testing her to see if she belongs, and Daniel admits that he has spent his life passing tests designed by other people, rarely questioning who created them or why. Claire tells him she is not trying to belong. She is simply trying to remain herself in a place that prefers labels over character, and Daniel hears something in her voice that unsettles him, a clarity he has not allowed himself in years. As they head inside for dinner, both of them understand that the contract they signed did not account for this part, the quiet recognition that pretending has a way of revealing more than truth ever intended, and that the real challenge ahead will not be convincing his family, but deciding how much of themselves they are willing to protect when the performance starts to feel real. The evening dinner unfolds with a careful rhythm, crystal glasses catching the light, conversation flowing just smoothly enough to hide the undercurrent of evaluation, and Claire feels it immediately, the shift from polite curiosity to quiet judgment as seats are taken and expectations settle into place. Daniel's family gathers around the long table overlooking the lake, the setting designed to impress without appearing to try, and Claire understands that this is where appearances matter most, where every word will be remembered and weighed later. Daniel sits beside her, close enough to signal unity, distant enough to respect the boundaries they agreed on, and as plates are served his mother begins steering the conversation with practiced ease, asking about plans for the future, about timelines, about how Claire envisions life alongside a man whose work never truly ends. Claire answers thoughtfully, not rushing to fill the space, explaining that she believes stability is built through consistency, not spectacle, that showing up every day matters more than titles or headlines, and Daniel notices the way a few relatives exchange glances, surprised by her certainty. Midway through dinner, a cousin leans back in his chair and asks directly what Claire studied in college, his tone casual but edged with expectation, and Claire meets his gaze without defensiveness, saying she did not finish college, that circumstances required her to work instead, and that learning did not stop just because formal education did. The table grows quiet for a moment, the kind of silence that invites embarrassment, but Claire holds it calmly, refusing to apologize for facts that shaped her resilience. Daniel feels something tighten in his chest, the instinct to intervene battling with the knowledge that she does not need saving, and when his mother smoothly changes the subject, Claire understands she has passed one test by refusing to flinch. As the evening continues, small challenges appear, a remark about travel destinations she has never visited, a joke about networking events she has never attended, and Claire responds with grace, listening more than speaking, contributing when it matters, demonstrating awareness rather than insecurity. Daniel begins to see his family differently through her presence, noticing how often they measure value through shared experiences rather than shared character, and he wonders how many times he has unconsciously played along. After dessert, as the group moves toward the living room, Daniel's aunt pulls Claire aside under the guise of friendliness and asks, with a polite smile, whether she feels out of place among people who have known Daniel his entire life. And Claire answers honestly, saying she does not need to belong to be respectful, that she understands not every room is designed for comfort, but she chooses to stand steady anyway. The response catches the aunt off guard, and Claire senses that authenticity, even when inconvenient, carries a quiet authority. Later that night, as conversations break into smaller clusters, Daniel and Claire step outside onto the terrace, the cool air offering relief from the tension inside, and Daniel finally speaks, telling her that she handled everything with composure, that his family can be difficult, and Claire replies that difficulty is familiar, that what unsettles her is not judgment but pretense. She tells him she will not diminish herself to be accepted, not here, not anywhere, and Daniel listens, realizing that her presence is exposing truth he has avoided confronting, about how much of his life has been shaped by expectation rather than choice. Inside, his mother watches them through the glass, noting their distance and their connection at the same time, filing observations away for later. As the night winds down and guests begin to retire, Daniel walks Claire back to her room, stopping short of the door, respecting the line they drew, and for a brief moment neither of them moves. Claire thanks him for not correcting her answers, for trusting her judgment, and Daniel admits that watching her navigate his world has made him question the one he built. When the door finally closes, both of them stand alone with their thoughts, aware that the performance has deepened into something more complicated, that admiration has replaced assumption, and that the remaining days of the weekend will demand not just acting, but choices that cannot be rehearsed. Sunday morning arrives with the quiet tension of a day designed to decide outcomes, and Claire feels it before she opens her eyes, the sense that today is different from the rehearsed dinners and careful conversations that came before. The charity brunch is held at a private clubhouse near the lake, a place where generosity is displayed publicly and intentions are judged silently. And Daniel explains over a light breakfast that this is where his family watches most closely, because reputation here matters as much as money. Claire listens, smoothing the fabric of her dress, reminding herself that this is still a role, still temporary, even as her instincts tell her that moments like this have a way of becoming permanent in memory. The room fills quickly with familiar faces from the night before and new ones who have heard just enough about Daniel's fiancée to arrive curious. And as Claire steps inside beside him, she feels the collective glance sweep over her, measuring, comparing, placing her on an invisible scale. Daniel introduces her to donors and board members, his hand resting lightly at her elbow, a signal of partnership that feels more natural than either of them expected, and Claire responds with warmth and restraint, listening carefully, asking thoughtful questions, never overstating her place. Midway through the brunch, a conversation shifts when one of Daniel's relatives mentions the foundation's recent initiatives, speaking with pride about the numbers raised and the visibility gained, and Claire notices a volunteer nearby, quietly stacking chairs, moving efficiently without being acknowledged. Without drawing attention to herself, Claire steps away from the table to help, lifting a stack of plates, thanking the volunteer by name after reading it from her badge, and the simple act creates a ripple, subtle but unmistakable. A few heads turn. Daniel notices immediately, not because the gesture is dramatic, but because it is instinctive, unperformed, and he realizes that she is not trying to impress anyone. She is simply being herself. When Claire returns to the table, Daniel's mother asks, with polite surprise, whether she often volunteers, and Claire answers honestly, saying she helps when she can. That contribution does not require an invitation, and that showing up matters more than recognition. The words hang in the air, gentle but firm. And for the first time Daniel sees his family pause not to judge, but to consider. Later, during a brief speech thanking donors, a board member jokes lightly about how charity work is easier when one does not have to worry about money, and laughter ripples through the room. But Claire does not laugh. She stands quietly beside Daniel, her expression steady. And when conversation resumes, she speaks to a woman nearby about budgeting, about making small resources stretch, about understanding impact from the ground up, and the woman listens with unexpected interest. Daniel feels the shift then, the way Claire's presence is reframing the room, not by challenging anyone openly, but by offering a perspective that cannot be dismissed. Outside, as guests begin to disperse, Daniel's cousin approaches him privately, commenting that Claire is different from what they expected, not in the way they feared, but in a way they did not anticipate, and Daniel realizes that the performance is no longer his to control. On the drive back to the house, silence fills the car, not uncomfortable but charged, and Claire finally speaks, saying she hopes she did not overstep, that she knows appearances matter here, and Daniel answers without hesitation that she did exactly what mattered. He admits that watching her today made him question what his family celebrates and why, and Claire replies that kindness does not belong to any class, it only reveals it. As they pull into the driveway, both of them understand that something irreversible has happened, that the weekend has crossed a line from arrangement to consequence, and that the truth she carries is not a secret waiting to be exposed, but a standard that will soon force everyone, including Daniel, to choose what they value most. That evening settles into a quieter pace, the house exhaling after the scrutiny of the day, and Claire finds herself alone in the kitchen rinsing a mug she does not need to wash, using the small motion to steady her thoughts as the reality of what she felt at the brunch begins to surface. Daniel joins her a moment later, leaning against the counter at a respectful distance, the space between them charged not with rules but with questions neither of them planned for. He thanks her again, not in the polite tone of obligation, but with a sincerity that catches her off guard, telling her that she shifted the room in a way he could not have orchestrated, and Claire shrugs lightly, saying she did not intend to make a statement, that she only acted the way she always does. They move to the living room, lights low, lake reflecting moonlight through the windows, and sit on opposite ends of the couch, the distance symbolic rather than enforced. Daniel admits that he has spent years believing control was the same as stability, that if he anticipated every outcome, he could avoid disappointment, and Claire listens without interruption, recognizing the familiar pattern of someone who has never been allowed to fail safely. She tells him that survival taught her something different, that control is often an illusion, and that dignity comes from choosing how you respond when plans collapse. The conversation slows, becoming less about the weekend and more about the paths that brought them here, and Daniel asks, carefully, what she would have done if she had said no in the coffee shop. Claire answers honestly, saying she would have figured something out, that she always does, but that saying yes did not feel like compromise. It felt like a challenge she could meet without losing herself. Daniel absorbs this quietly, realizing that he approached the arrangement believing he held all the leverage, only to discover that Claire entered it with a strength not tied to money or access. Later, they step outside onto the deck, the air cool and still, and for a moment neither of them speaks, content to let the silence exist without filling it, and that shared comfort unsettles Daniel more than the tension ever did. He tells her that the contract ends tomorrow evening, that once his family leaves she is free to go, no questions, no expectations, and Claire nods, acknowledging the boundary even as something in her tightens at the thought of returning to a life that now feels slightly altered. She reminds him that this was always the plan, that nothing has changed, and Daniel agrees, though the words sound hollow to his own ears. As they stand there, Claire shares a small detail she has not mentioned before, that she learned early not to rely on permanence, that temporary arrangements have defined much of her life, and Daniel recognizes the irony that this temporary role has revealed something lasting within him, a discomfort with the idea of letting her disappear without consequence. Inside, Daniel's mother watches them briefly from the hallway, noting the ease of their posture, the lack of performance, and makes a mental note that the most telling moments often happen when no audience is present. When Claire finally retires to her room, she sits on the edge of the bed, staring at the packed bag she has barely touched all weekend, realizing that the hardest part of leaving will not be the loss of comfort, but the return to invisibility. Daniel remains on the deck long after she is gone, grappling with the realization that he has begun to value her perspective not because it challenges his world, but because it clarifies it, and that the line between acting and authenticity has blurred beyond what the contract can contain. By the time the house falls fully quiet, both of them understand that the next day will demand a choice neither anticipated, one that cannot be negotiated or postponed, because feelings, once acknowledged, do not retreat simply because an agreement says they should. The morning of departure arrives sooner than either of them expects, The lake house filled with the quiet efficiency of suitcases being closed and polite goodbyes rehearsed. And Claire feels the familiar instinct to disappear gracefully, to leave no trace once her role is complete. Daniel's family gathers for a final breakfast. Conversation lighter on the surface, but beneath it Claire senses a shift, the kind that precedes confrontation rather than closure. As plates are cleared, Daniel's mother asks everyone to remain seated, her voice calm and measured, and Claire understands instantly that this is not a casual request. Daniel stiffens beside her, recognizing the tone he has heard since childhood when decisions were about to be made without room for negotiation. His mother begins by thanking Claire for the weekend, acknowledging her composure and presence, then pivots smoothly to questions about the future, about timelines, about what comes next now that introductions have been made. The room grows still. Daniel answers first, repeating what they agreed on, that they will take things privately, that not everything needs to be decided aloud, but his mother presses gently, pointing out that transparency matters in families like theirs. Then his aunt interjects, remarking that clarity is important when commitments involve reputations, and suddenly the warmth drains from the room, replaced by expectation. Claire feels the moment arrive, sharp and unavoidable, and she realizes that silence now would be interpreted as admission. She takes a breath and speaks before Daniel can redirect, her voice steady, respectful, and unmistakably honest. She says there is something they should know, that she does not want to leave under false impressions, that this weekend began as an agreement, a temporary arrangement meant to serve a specific purpose. A ripple moves through the table. Daniel turns toward her, shock flickering across his face, not because the truth is new, but because the timing is not theirs to control. Claire continues, explaining that she was hired to pose as his fiancée for the gathering, that there was a contract, clear boundaries, and an understanding that the role would end when the weekend did. Gasps follow, restrained but audible, and Daniel's cousin laughs once in disbelief before stopping himself. Daniel's mother does not raise her voice. She asks why, asks whether her son believed deception was acceptable, and Daniel feels years of expectation crash into the present. Claire does not wait for him to answer. She says she accepted because she needed the work, because survival sometimes demands choices that look different from the outside, and because she believes she could do so without compromising her integrity. She makes it clear that she does not regret how she conducted herself, that she treated everyone with respect, because respect is not conditional on wealth or circumstance. The room erupts into overlapping reactions, accusations of manipulation, concerns about appearances, questions about how long this deception would have continued, and Daniel stands abruptly, trying to speak, but Claire raises a hand gently, asking for one more moment. She turns to Daniel's mother and says that while the arrangement was temporary, her actions were not an act, that kindness, restraint, and honesty are not performances she switches on and off, and that if the family feels offended, the responsibility rests with the decision to prioritize image over character. The words land heavily, and for the first time Daniel sees his mother hesitate, not because she agrees, but because she recognizes conviction when she hears it. Daniel finally speaks, taking responsibility for initiating the agreement, admitting that he underestimated the impact it would have, not only on his family, but on himself, and that Claire did not deceive anyone about who she is. He states, plainly, that she behaved with more integrity than he did, and the admission costs him, but it feels necessary. Claire gathers her bag quietly, signaling that she will not argue or defend herself further, and thanks them for the hospitality, saying she hopes the truth allows everyone to move forward without confusion. She turns to Daniel, meeting his eyes with a mixture of resolve and regret, and tells him that the contract ends now, that she will leave as agreed, and that whatever he chooses next should be because it aligns with his values, not because it repairs an image. As she walks toward the door, the room remains silent, the weight of her words lingering, and Daniel is left standing between the family that shaped him and the woman who revealed a truth he can no longer ignore, realizing that the real test was never about a fiancé, but about who he is willing to be when the performance collapses. Claire's footsteps echo briefly in the hallway before the front door closes behind her, the sound cutting through the room with a finality that no one moves to interrupt, and Daniel stands frozen for a moment longer than he should, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest until it becomes impossible to breathe through silence alone. His mother speaks first, not in anger, but with controlled disappointment, saying this situation has gone too far, that arrangements like this damage trust, that his judgment is being questioned by people who matter. An uncle adds that reputations take years to build and seconds to fracture, that Daniel has responsibilities beyond personal feelings, and the words land where they always have, in the place he has relied on to guide decisions without emotion. Daniel listens, nodding automatically. Yet something has shifted, because for the first time the logic sounds hollow, disconnected from what he just witnessed, from the integrity Claire displayed when honesty cost her everything she stood to gain. He asks to be excused and steps outside, the cold air sharp against his skin as he scans the driveway. Already knowing she is gone, already knowing that letting her walk away without response would be the easiest choice he has made all weekend. Inside the house, his family continues talking, planning damage control, discussing how to frame the narrative, and Daniel realizes with a quiet clarity that this is the language he has always spoken fluently, the one that trades truth for alignment and comfort. He pulls out his phone and scrolls to the contract stored there, the simple document that defined boundaries and duration, and he reads it slowly, line by line, recognizing how safe it once felt to reduce human connection to clauses and compensation. Without hesitation, he deletes it. The decision is not dramatic, but it is definitive. Daniel returns inside, his posture different now, and tells his family that the arrangement is over, not because it failed, but because it revealed something he cannot ignore, that Claire acted with more honesty than anyone in the room, including himself. His mother asks what he intends to do, whether he plans to chase a woman who humiliated them publicly, and Daniel answers calmly that there was no humiliation in truth, only discomfort in facing it. He says he is leaving, that the gathering is over for him, and that any consequences will be his to manage. The silence that follows is heavier than any argument, but Daniel does not wait for permission. He takes his keys and drives away, retracing the road toward the city with a sense of urgency that surprises him, not rooted in fear of loss, but in the need to stand behind a choice made without negotiation. Meanwhile, Claire sits on a bench near the lake's edge, waiting for a ride-share she ordered moments earlier, replaying the breakfast scene in her mind, questioning whether she spoke too much or too soon, yet knowing she would not change her words even if given the chance. When Daniel's car pulls up instead, she looks up in disbelief, her first instinct to stand and leave, to avoid prolonging an ending she already accepted. Daniel steps out quickly, stopping a few feet away, respecting her space, and tells her he is sorry, not in the careful tone of apology used to repair optics, but with the vulnerability of someone acknowledging failure without defense. He says she did not owe his family anything, that she honored the agreement with more integrity than he did, and that he will not let her leave believing she was disposable. Claire listens quietly, arms crossed, reminding him that the contract was clear, that she said what she needed to say, and that walking away now is the cleanest outcome. Daniel tells her he ended the contract, not to renegotiate terms, but to remove them entirely, that whatever happens next must exist without conditions or payment. He admits that he does not know where this leads, only that letting her disappear would confirm everything she accused his world of being. Claire studies him for a long moment, searching for the familiar signs of power reasserting control, but finds none, only uncertainty and resolve. She tells him she will not step into another arrangement, that if she stays, it will be as herself, with the freedom to leave whenever she chooses. Daniel agrees without hesitation, saying that choice is exactly what he failed to offer before, and as they stand there, the space between them shifts, no longer defined by roles or expectations, but by a mutual decision to face whatever comes next without a contract to hide behind. The weeks that follow pass without spectacle, without headlines or staged reconciliations, and that is exactly how Daniel chooses it, because for the first time his decisions are not calibrated for approval, but aligned with something quieter and more demanding. Claire returns to her routines, to early mornings and long shifts, yet she does not return unchanged, because walking away with her dignity intact has given her a steadiness she did not know she could claim, and Daniel does not disappear from her life, but neither does he rush to fill the space with promises. They meet slowly, deliberately, in ordinary places, a small diner near her apartment, a public park where no one knows his name, conversations unfolding without scripts or leverage. Daniel listens more than he speaks, learning how much he missed when power insulated him from discomfort. And Claire observes how he navigates the world without introducing himself through status, how effort replaces assumption. When Daniel's family reaches out, it is not with demands, but with cautious questions, and Daniel answers them honestly, setting boundaries he never enforced before, making it clear that respect is no longer negotiable. That partnership is not a performance to be approved, but a choice to be honored. Months later, at a modest community fundraiser far removed from the lake house, Claire stands beside Daniel again, not as a role, but as a collaborator, having helped design an outreach initiative that funds local programs with input from people who actually use them. And when Daniel publicly credits her leadership, the recognition feels earned, not bestowed. His mother attends quietly, observing rather than directing, and afterward she thanks Claire without qualification, acknowledging that integrity does not require permission to exist, and Claire accepts the words without triumph, understanding that change arrives when it is ready, not when it is forced. One evening, as they walk along the same lake where everything unraveled, Daniel stops and hands Claire something small, not a diamond or a spectacle, but a simple ring he chose without consultation or conditions. And he tells her he is not asking for certainty or permanence, only for the chance to choose her openly, without contracts, without compensation, without protection from consequence. Claire takes her time before answering, because she has learned that choice matters most when it is unhurried. And when she says yes, it is not because the world finally fits her, but because she fits herself within it. The ring does not change her life overnight, but it marks a moment when love becomes an action rather than a transaction, and Daniel understands that leadership without humility is hollow, that wealth without accountability is fragile, and that the strongest commitment he can make is to show up without hiding behind status. On the day they marry, there is no estate or guest list designed to impress, only a small gathering of people who stood beside them when truth was inconvenient. And as Claire walks toward Daniel, she carries nothing borrowed, nothing rehearsed, only the quiet certainty that she was never the secret in this story, she was the measure. And when Daniel takes her hand, he does so not as a millionaire securing approval, but as a man who learned that love begins where contracts end, and that true belonging is not granted by wealth or lineage, but by the courage to choose authenticity when everything else would be easier.